The city shook, buildings crumbled, streets split open, and fires raged, swallowing everything in their path. Amid the chaos, one man ran toward danger instead of away from it. Amadeo Peter Giannini, a quiet fruit vendor's son, was about to change the course of history. Imagine losing everything you own overnight. For most, hope would vanish in the smoke and rubble. But Giannini saw something others didn't: an opportunity to help, to rebuild, to give ordinary people a chance when no one else would. He grabbed sacks of cash, piled them onto a horse-drawn cart, and raced through streets that were barely recognizable, all to save his customers' money. Today, we'll uncover the extraordinary journey of Amadeo Giannini, a story of courage, vision, and relentless determination. From a small Italian neighborhood in California to the heart of American finance, this is the tale of the man who turned disaster into opportunity and reshaped the future of banking forever. The foundations of a vision. Before Amadeo Giannini became the man who would revolutionize banking, he was just a boy born on May 6, 1870, to Italian immigrant parents in San Francisco. His family had crossed the ocean seeking opportunity, carving out a life in a city that was bustling, chaotic, and often unwelcoming to newcomers. For young Amadeo, however, it was a world of possibility and challenge. From an early age, he was at his father's side, working behind a modest wooden fruit stand piled high with oranges, apples, and lemons. While other children played, Amadeo learned to observe people, calculate prices in his head, and anticipate what customers wanted before they asked. He listened to their stories, remembered their names, and discovered that trust and genuine attention could turn strangers into loyal patrons. Life for Italian immigrants in California at this time was rarely easy. Many families faced prejudice, financial hardship, and exclusion from mainstream institutions. Banks often refused their business, seeing them as risky or unimportant. Giannini's family knew these struggles firsthand, and they shaped his worldview from a young age. Even as a boy, Amadeo displayed a rare mix of curiosity, empathy, and determination. Neighbors recalled him as sharp and attentive, always ready to help his father or offer advice to regular customers. His fascination with business wasn't about money alone. It was about relationships, fairness, and understanding what made people tick. In these small interactions, he began building the foundations of a philosophy that would later guide him in creating a bank for ordinary people, not just the wealthy elite. Family life reinforced these lessons. Meals were full of conversation, debate, and stories of perseverance. Listening, respecting others, and learning from everyday experiences became ingrained in Amadeo's character. By the time he reached his teenage years, he was no longer just a helper at a fruit stand. He was a keen observer of human nature, a problem solver, and a young man ready to take his first steps toward a bigger vision. From fruit stand to financial frontier, the lessons learned behind his father's fruit stand were about to guide Amadeo Giannini's next chapter. The boy who once calculated prices for oranges and remembered every customer's preference was now ready to take on a challenge far beyond a wooden cart. The empathy, patience, and keen observation he had developed in North Beach would prove invaluable in a new career, handling money on a much larger scale. He saw the frustration of people denied the tools to succeed and felt the urgency of helping them find a path forward. Giannini's first foray into banking was modest. He started as a clerk at a small local bank, absorbing every detail of the trade. He recorded deposits, watched transactions, and learned how banks measured risk, calculated interest, and made decisions that could build or destroy lives. It was there he noticed a pattern that troubled him. Most banks only cared about the wealthy and well-connected. Immigrants, small shopkeepers, and ordinary workers were considered too risky, often turned away with no opportunity to grow. Giannini understood their struggles because he had lived them, and he knew there had to be a better way. In 1904, with experience, careful savings, and a bold vision, he took the leap and founded the Bank of Italy. The idea was simple but revolutionary. Give ordinary people access to financial services, provide loans to immigrants and small businesses, and treat every customer with respect and dignity. Unlike other banks that demanded high collateral and turned away anyone deemed too risky, Giannini welcomed them. He saw potential where others saw danger, and trust where others saw uncertainty. The early days were far from easy. Convincing people to trust a new bank required patience and persistence. Competitors scoffed at his unconventional approach. Regulators watched closely. Yet Giannini's reputation for honesty and fairness drew clients who had nowhere else to turn. A small grocer could secure a loan to expand. A farmer could finance equipment to increase production. Each small victory reinforced the philosophy that banking could be personal, empowering, and transformative. Giannini also relied on his natural instincts for reading people. He built relationships the same way he had at the fruit stand, by listening, remembering details, and treating customers as partners, not just account numbers. Word spread through immigrant communities that there was a bank that truly cared. These early steps laid the foundation for Giannini's later heroics. The skills, philosophy, and courage he cultivated during this period would soon be tested on a scale no fruit stand or bank ledger could prepare him for. A city in flames, the 1906 earthquake. This is the story of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, a catastrophe that destroyed the city and revealed the courage and vision of the man who believed banking should serve the people. On the morning of April 18, 1906, San Francisco trembled as if the earth itself had grown angry. Buildings shuddered, streets cracked, and in an instant, homes, businesses, and lives were thrown into chaos. Fires ignited across the city, spreading quickly through neighborhoods made of wood and consuming everything in their path. The sky darkened with smoke, and screams mingled with the roar of collapsing structures. For most, it was a scene of unimaginable horror, chaos, confusion, and loss beyond measure. Amid the terror, Giannini acted. While others fled in panic, he ran toward danger. The Bank of Italy's main branch had survived the quake, but the surrounding city was in flames, and with it, the city's money, records, and livelihoods were at risk. Giannini piled sacks of cash onto a horse-drawn wagon and drove through the smoke-filled streets, determined to save his customers' deposits. The roads were impassable, buildings crumbling at every turn, yet he pressed forward, driven by a sense of duty, empathy, and his unwavering belief in helping ordinary people when they needed it most. It wasn't just money he rescued, it was hope. One elderly shopkeeper, whose life savings were stored in the Bank of Italy, watched in awe as Giannini personally ensured her funds were safe, allowing her to rebuild her store. A small farmer, whose mortgage payments had been delayed due to the quake, found relief when Giannini immediately authorized a loan to repair damaged equipment. Countless stories like these spread through the city. A banker who risked his life to protect the community, who put people first even when the city itself seemed lost. The economic impact of the disaster was staggering. Thousands of businesses were destroyed, personal fortunes vanished, and the city's infrastructure was in ruins. Many banks collapsed under the weight of panic and fire, leaving depositors helpless. But the Bank of Italy, under Giannini's leadership, became a lifeline. His quick action, combined with the trust he had built in the immigrant community, allowed him to reopen branches in temporary locations, issue emergency loans, and provide the stability the city desperately needed. By the time the fires subsided and the city began to rise from the ashes, Giannini had cemented his reputation, not just as a banker, but as a man who embodied courage, foresight, and humanity. The earthquake tested every skill he had developed, every principle he had embraced, and the result was nothing short of extraordinary. A bank that survived the city's worst disaster, and a community that saw firsthand what it meant to be served by someone who believed in them. The birth of branch banking and a national vision. The fires had burned out, and San Francisco was ready to rebuild. For Amadeo Giannini, this was not a time to rest. It was the beginning of a bold new chapter. The man who had raced through smoke-filled streets with sacks of cash now turned his attention to building a bank that could grow alongside a recovering city, and eventually, a changing nation. The earthquake had taught Giannini one crucial lesson. Ordinary people needed a bank that understood them and that could reach them wherever they were. This vision sparked the era of branch banking. Instead of confining the Bank of Italy to a single downtown office, Giannini opened multiple branches across San Francisco and surrounding areas, bringing financial services directly to the immigrant neighborhoods and small business districts that had been overlooked by traditional banks. Each branch was a hub of trust and support, staffed by people trained to treat clients with respect and empathy, echoing the same principles Giannini had learned at his father's fruit stand decades earlier. Lending to immigrants and small businesses became a cornerstone of his strategy. Giannini didn't see risk, he saw potential. A tailor dreaming of expanding his shop, a grocer hoping to import new goods, or a carpenter building homes in a city desperate for housing, all found opportunities through his bank. By understanding their businesses, listening to their plans, and providing loans with reasonable terms, Giannini transformed the financial landscape for people who had previously been shut out of it entirely. These loans weren't just financial transactions, they were acts of empowerment. Agriculture and local projects also received Giannini's attention. He financed farms, irrigation systems, and small factories, recognizing that a thriving local economy depended on more than just city streets. Farmers who had struggled to secure loans elsewhere could now invest in better equipment and expand production. Small manufacturers found the capital to innovate and hire more workers. By funding projects that were often overlooked by larger banks, Giannini helped fuel growth across the region, creating ripple effects that benefited countless families and communities. Innovation didn't stop with lending. Giannini embraced early banking technologies, from ledger systems that improved record-keeping to telegraphic transfers that allowed faster, safer transactions. He was a pioneer in understanding that technology could enhance customer trust and operational efficiency, a philosophy that would later underpin Bank of America's rise as a national powerhouse. Even as competitors scoffed at his willingness to lend to riskier clients, Giannini's methods proved both profitable and sustainable. Stories of successful loans spread quickly. A small business owner, once turned away by every bank in town, expanded into multiple locations thanks to Giannini's support. A farmer, able to irrigate his land and buy modern equipment, tripled his harvest within a few years. These successes reinforced the reputation of the Bank of Italy as not only a safe place for deposits, but a true partner in growth. Yet the path was not without challenges. Competitors attempted to undercut him. Regulators scrutinized his unconventional methods, and managing a rapidly expanding bank required careful balancing of risk and opportunity. Giannini met each challenge with the same mix of shrewdness, empathy, and strategic thinking that had carried him from the fruit stand to the heart of San Francisco's financial world. By the 1920s, the Bank of Italy was more than a local bank. It was a model for modern banking. Its branches, loans, and innovative policies demonstrated that financial institutions could be both profitable and deeply connected to the communities they served. Giannini had not only rebuilt what the earthquake had destroyed, but had also laid the foundation for a new kind of banking, one that recognized the potential in every small business, every immigrant family, and every local project. Financing California and Hollywood. After rebuilding San Francisco and supporting local businesses and farms, Amadeo Giannini's vision was expanding even further. This is the story of how his daring investments and personal touch would reach beyond San Francisco, helping to shape California's economy and even the film industry itself. By the 1920s, California was booming, and Giannini recognized that growth required more than just loans to small shopkeepers. He began financing large-scale infrastructure projects that would transform the state. Roads, bridges, and power plants. These were projects that traditional banks often considered too risky or cumbersome. But Giannini saw opportunity where others saw obstacles. By funding projects critical to the state's development, he not only helped California thrive, but also created a ripple effect that benefited countless small businesses and communities across the region. At the same time, Hollywood was emerging as a global center for filmmaking, yet it lacked reliable sources of funding. Studios struggled to secure loans for production, and investors were cautious about backing such an untested industry. Giannini, however, trusted people's potential. He extended loans to filmmakers and studios, giving birth to some of the most iconic films of the era. Stories abound of directors and producers walking into his office, nervous but hopeful, only to leave with the financing needed to bring their visions to life. It was not just money. It was belief in creativity, risk-taking, and the entrepreneurial spirit. Supporting California's economy also meant continuing his work with immigrants and small businesses. Giannini financed bakeries, clothing shops, and restaurants, enabling families to expand operations and provide steady employment. He invested in farms and factories, often taking risks that other banks would avoid. Each successful loan was a story of trust repaid, a neighborhood bakery thriving, a factory hiring more workers, a small farm turning into a major supplier. Giannini understood that the success of small businesses fueled the broader economy, and he saw his bank as a partner in that growth. Partnerships with influential figures became another hallmark of this period. Giannini worked closely with politicians, developers, and cultural leaders, combining his financial acumen with their vision. These collaborations allowed him to underwrite ambitious projects, from urban planning initiatives to groundbreaking film productions that changed the face of California. Yet even when stakes were high and risk seemed enormous, Giannini's decisions were guided by the same principles he had learned as a boy: empathy, trust, and a deep understanding of human ambition. Of course, not every gamble succeeded. Some loans faltered, some projects faced delays or setbacks. But Giannini treated failures as lessons, analyzing risks carefully and adjusting his approach. His willingness to take calculated chances distinguished him from other bankers of the time. While many saw uncertainty, he saw potential. and that vision turned risks into rewards for both the bank and the people it served. By the end of this period, Giannini had done more than just finance individual projects. He had helped shape the trajectory of California itself. Roads, power systems, farms, businesses, and films all bore his influence. Through bold investments, careful partnerships, and an unwavering commitment to his philosophy of banking for the people, he demonstrated that banks could be engines of innovation, creativity, and growth. The man behind the bank. As the Bank of Italy grew from a single branch to a powerful force across California, Amadeo Giannini's story was no longer just about banking. It was also about the man behind the bank. Giannini was a rare mix of shrewdness and approachability. Despite running one of the fastest-growing banks in the country, he never acted like a distant executive. He walked the streets of San Francisco freely, greeted customers by name, and listened carefully to their stories. People admired him not just for his intelligence, but for the way he combined it with kindness. He could make bold, clever decisions in business while still understanding the human side of every transaction. Family was at the heart of Giannini's life. He married Clorinda Agnes Cuneo in 1892, and together they raised 6 children, including Lawrence Mario, Agnes Rose, Lloyd Thomas, and Claire. His daughter, Claire Giannini Hoffman, became a remarkable figure herself, deeply involved in both the bank's work and philanthropy, carrying forward her father's vision. At home, Giannini taught his children the same lessons he lived by: hard work, honesty, and caring for others. Family dinners were not just meals. They were times to share stories, discuss problems, and learn values that would shape generations. His immigrant roots shaped who he was in both life and business. Growing up in a family that had struggled to find its place in San Francisco, Giannini knew what it felt like to be overlooked or treated unfairly. That understanding became the foundation of his banking philosophy. He made sure the Bank of Italy welcomed immigrants, small business owners, and ordinary people who had nowhere else to turn. Every loan he gave, every risk he took, was guided by a sense of fairness and responsibility. Despite creating one of the largest banks in the country, Giannini lived modestly. At the time of his death in 1949, his net worth was around $500,000. He reinvested most of the bank's profits into the company, the community, and philanthropic projects, including the Giannini Foundation of Agricultural Economics at UC Berkeley. During the Great Depression, he even took no salary, showing that his focus was never on personal gain, but on helping people and keeping the bank alive. Remarkably, nearly 40% of Bank of America's shares were owned by employees, reflecting Giannini's belief that success should be shared. His leadership style reflected the same values. He was humble but decisive, approachable yet strategic. Employees and customers knew they could speak to him directly. He encouraged innovation, welcomed new ideas, and treated every person, client or employee, with respect. His courage, empathy, and sharp judgment allowed him to navigate both everyday banking and extraordinary events, like rescuing San Francisco after the 1906 earthquake. Amadeo Giannini's personal life and leadership were inseparable from his professional achievements. His family, values, humility, and immigrant experience shaped every decision. Through his example, he showed that banking could be more than numbers and profits. It could be a way to empower people, strengthen communities, and build lasting trust. The birth of Bank of America. Giannini's humility and values shaped the way he led his bank, but the true measure of his life would be what remained after him. The man who once started with a fruit stand left behind something far larger than himself, a legacy that reshaped banking forever. This is the story of Amadeo Giannini's lasting impact, the transformation of the Bank of Italy into the Bank of America, and the influence it still carries today. By the 1930s, Giannini's creation had grown far beyond San Francisco. What began as a single room in North Beach became a statewide network and then a national institution. But with this growth came a question. How could a bank that started with immigrants in California now represent the hopes and ambitions of millions of Americans across the country? The answer lay in a bold decision: changing its name. In 1930, the Bank of Italy officially became the Bank of America. It was more than a rebrand. It was a declaration of Giannini's vision, a bank not tied to one group, one city, or even one state, but a bank that belonged to the entire nation. He believed America's strength lay in ordinary people, and the name symbolized his mission to give every farmer, shopkeeper, and immigrant family the same access to opportunity as the wealthy elite. This transition also marked a shift in scale. By the time Giannini died, Bank of America had become the largest bank in the United States, with more than 500 branches and deposits exceeding $5 billion, a staggering figure at the time. What started as a neighborhood lender for Italian immigrants had grown into the first truly nationwide banking institution, and the growth didn't stop there. Today, Bank of America stands as one of the biggest financial institutions in the world, serving over 68 million customers, with trillions in assets and branches across the globe. The scale alone is a monument to Giannini's belief that banking should be for everyone. With the transition complete, Giannini had succeeded in building something no one thought possible: a truly national bank that combined the heart of a neighborhood lender with the reach of a financial giant, the People's Banker. On June 3, 1949, Amadeo Giannini died at the age of 79. He had lived modestly, despite founding one of the largest banks in the world. At the time of his death, his personal fortune was small compared to the empire he built, but his wealth was never measured in money. It was measured in opportunity. The millions of lives uplifted because one man believed banking should serve everyone. Thousands attended his funeral, and newspapers across the country mourned the loss of a man they called the People's Banker. Yet his death was not an ending, but a continuation. Bank of America carried his vision forward, growing into a global institution while still echoing the spirit of its founder. His influence lives on every time a small business receives its first loan, every time a working family opens a savings account, and every time banking serves not just profit, but people. Amadeo Giannini did not set out to become a giant of finance. He set out to help people. In doing so, he transformed the financial world and left behind a legacy that continues to ripple through the lives of millions, decades after his passing. He wasn't the richest banker of his era. He didn't chase luxury or titles. Instead, he built something more enduring, a system where small businesses, farmers, immigrants, and families could dream bigger because someone finally believed in them. That simple but radical idea reshaped finance, spread prosperity, and helped create the foundation of modern banking. When Giannini died in 1949, his personal fortune was modest, but his true wealth lived in the millions of lives he had touched. Today, Bank of America stands as one of the largest financial institutions in the world, serving tens of millions of people. Yet its roots trace back to a fruit stand in North Beach and the unwavering determination of one man. Giannini's legacy is proof that greatness doesn't always come from power or privilege. It comes from empathy, vision, and the courage to challenge what others believe is impossible. So the next time you pass a bank, a movie theater, or even a family-owned shop that began with a small loan, remember Amadeo Giannini, the banker who dared to serve the people, and in doing so, changed America forever. From oranges on a cart to billions in deposits, his story reminds us that the greatest revolutions begin with the simplest belief that everyone deserves a chance.